All right, great. As I mentioned, it was short and sweet, but hopefully to the point. If there's any question, I'll be happy to answer. So, any comments or any questions or concerns?
A comment,
please, Jean-Claude.
About like a bit more than, yeah, probably now almost 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, prior to COVID. I saw that natural gas was trading very, very low. It was below $2. And I looked at it historically long term, and it rarely trades below two, like 1.5, that area. So I thought, oh, this is a good, entry point. And so I didn't know much about commodities or something like that. So I made the mistake, but I I invested in a natural gas producer, one of the ones, and so that was sort of my way of playing that trade. And so the producer had debt, and then when COVID hit, it was around that time they needed to refinance that debt. And after March, April, you could see natural gas was starting to turn, and they were in negotiations with the banks to refinance that debt, but the banks didn't do it, and so they let them go bankrupt. And
I think I know who you're talking about.
It completely wiped out the equity, so it was an interesting, for me, it was a lesson, because I had the right idea in terms of, because natural gas is now over $4 or $5, but I used the wrong vehicle. That was one lesson. And the other lesson was, that sometimes the banks, they were acting in their own interest, because they could, I think they saw natural gas turning around too, but their position was, they could get, the company effectively, they had an option on the company with the defaulted bonds, right?
Absolutely.
So they were incentivized not to refinance.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's a great story, Jean-Claude. Actually, there's just few lessons on this as well. First of all, again, how volatile sometimes, although we talk about the structure of the investing, we look at the whole thing, but the energy sector, it can be, because especially natural gas, you just mentioned, being a lot of times we see that with the shale, right? So we talk about zombie companies, how the banks, they look at this, and you're absolutely right. I remember with the shale companies, when they came, the whole idea was a projection of the reserves, and the banks bought it. At least they thought that was a good investment, and they were looking at quadrupling the reserves. And unfortunately, the problem was the way the affected was under the top layer, not the deep layer. And then some of them with the horizontal fracking, some of them with, again, vertical fracking. But the banks, they look at what is their best interest, as you said. And one of the things about natural gas, like the time that you're talking about, is interesting, because it was really, it became a mild winter, and that was one of the reasons it went below the $2, and it became a very volatile. And so if we understand the effects of the weather, for instance, and it was under $2, if I'm not mistaken, it was like even if we had a mild winter in January and February of 2020, right before pandemic. So natural gas was down. I remember playing, because I used to play natural gas a lot, the futures I did, because the UNG, which is the largest ETF for natural gas, it was not the best vehicle because of the rolls. And but obviously, if you played UNG, you would have been a good winner in the last 8-9 months. It has done well, but kind of by default in a sense, because it has to, because of futures. But natural gas usually has a lot of contango, so that's one of the problems with natural gas as a whole. But the companies, so you were exposed to 3 or 4 different risks. but your idea was correct. So basically, perhaps again, actual either a fund or ETF would have been good. But yeah, I remember those days. And then you look at the liquefied natural gas, that they went really down, and then they just went to the roof. And of course, we are very big with the exporting to Japan, for instance. So LNG was an important company. But I'm glad that you mentioned that. So one of the things you looked at were whether the supply, you look at the supply and say, wait a minute, natural gas at $1.50, who's going to make money on this? So that's naturally what happens is it gets reduction in the producers, right? So then if the demand becomes constant and production has gone down, and that's when things start just by looking at the charts, right? So you don't have to know everything about natural gas, but this gives you a heads up because you can see that nobody is going to start paying to keep the, just as far as the exploration, other things of natural gas, and if you're going to get and who you want to, using the equipments and paying the maintenance and other thing, I just shut it down. So, but that's why the charts are really good, in my opinion. And you're absolutely, your observation was correct, but there were reasons. Again, there was oversupply. Obviously, the pandemic affected everything, and then the demand came back. So, another thing, as you recall, is it's the hub, right? The natural gas. We went in last April, May of the oversupply. We just couldn't get enough. But natural gas being a clean energy in a sense, that also will look at the vehicles, more vehicles using it. So, anyway, like Bolivia, for instance, has a lot of, it's the largest natural gas in South America, for instance, but nationalization came, they had the election, they had a very progressive president. So there was that fear that natural gas will be nationalized, for instance. So these are the thoughts that we have to think about. Yeah. So if we have known that, it might help us a little more. And but I appreciate sharing that, Jean-Claude. Yes, but there are many more like that. So, yeah. Okay. Excellent. Any other questions, comments? I hope it was helpful. As I mentioned, I just want something different. Every week we're gonna come up with just kind of mix and match. So, but with that in mind, my goodness, this could be one of the earliest we've done. I hope it was good. It has been an exciting week, actually. So Saturday should be a good class at a few trades that I would like to share. And Tesla's, I think, earning was out, and the next week is all technology. So be prepared for that. So the excitement continues. And now we have the Bitcoin ETF. My God, everybody's going to be very wealthy. Everybody is going to, and Bitcoin is going to go to 1 million. So that'll be, anyway. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you, your attention, being with us. So I'll look forward to seeing everyone on Saturday. Thank you so much.
Thanks for
Bye now.
Thank you.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Jean-Claude. Bye, Jan.